One of the troubling things that you'll find when you read the Bible is that sometimes you see characters do really horrendous things, and the text doesn't explicitly say in the moment, and thus they sinned against the Lord. Like Genesis 16, where Abram and Sarai use Hagar for her body and basically perpetuate the same thing that Abram had done to Sarai, pawning off her. Here's this now person that they've enslaved, this person they're abusing, this person that they're harming, Hagar, and the text doesn't explicitly say, and thus they sinned against the Lord. There's a lot that people could dive into with all of that. Some people talk about the difference between descriptive and prescriptive text, prescriptive prescribing how all people ought to live, and descriptive text just saying this is what's happened, doesn't condone it or not condone it, just says this is what happened. But there's another layer to it that I think is important. The Bible doesn't only teach us in an explicitly mathematical kind of way. By that I mean the Bible doesn't always teach us about morality through saying thou shalt not kill. Sometimes it does. But one of the ways that you even see Jesus teach is through parables, through stories. He invites people to be transformed by entering into a story and a narrative. In a way, it's kind of like watching a movie. And if you watch a romantic comedy, right, and you watch in the rom-com that one character lies all the time, you don't have to be told explicitly that lying wasn't good for you to see in the outcome that there is disconnect between the people and disconnect even with themselves when they start lying. And so similarly in the story of Genesis 16, what you see immediately after Abram and Sarai mistreat Hagar is there's disconnect between them. There's disconnect there between Abram and Sarai. There's disconnect with Hagar. And what we see is God is repeatedly on behalf of the oppressed. He goes and he meets Sarai there in the wilderness. And she is the first person to name God in all of the scriptures. There's all these interesting details in the text where Abram and Sarai in Genesis 16 don't refer to Hagar by her name. The first person to refer to her by her name outside the narrator is the angel of the Lord, who believe is Jesus. Powerful imagery throughout the text. A lot of commentators point out that this was kind of an ancient variation on polygamy when a family was experiencing the immensely painful battle of infertility, particularly in a culture where a woman's worth was found in her ability to have children. And so this would have been a variation on polygamy and kind of an ancient form of surrogacy that would have kind of made sense for a lot of people. This is what you do if you're in this type of social situation. You would use your slave to do this on your behalf. And so when we read the text, we read this as ancient and weird and all out of sorts. But for an ancient reader, they might have read this and said yeah, that's kind of what you're supposed to do. But what does the text do? It critiques a culturally conventional system, not from outside it, but from within it. You watch how it unfolds, and the system that you thought would be good actually turns out to breed animosity. And then you further the story, Hagar is enslaved and she's from Egypt. Where are the Israelites enslaved later? They're enslaved in Egypt. So we see it carry out generationally how this is bad. So once again, the text invites us to enter into the story, not only take it as just straight mathematical moral formulas. And so whenever you approach a difficult text in the Bible, note that sometimes the way that God teaches us is not only through a mathematical formula. He teaches us by inviting us into the story, because at the end of the day, God isn't just interested in our receiving of moral information. He's interested in our heart transformation. He doesn't want you just to know to be kind. He wants you to be formed into the type of person who is kind. And God teaches us in a way that is exactly how we need to be taught, through all sorts of different ways, in addition to the giving of mathematical statements about morality. What do you think?